Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a business proposal that breaks down a battlefield you might not think about very often, the intense global war for the brightest minds in academia. We're going to look at the challenges modern universities are up against and the new playbook they might need to win.
All right, so let's just get right to the heart of it. This is the big question, the one that probably keeps university leaders up at night. In a world where top talent can work from anywhere for anyone, how does an institution actually come out on top? How do you win this war? And look, the reality is, this isn't your grandfather's ivory tower anymore. Universities today are global brands, and they're competing on a massive world stage. Finding, and just as important, keeping the best researchers and professors, well, it's gotten seriously cutthroat. So, to really wrap our heads around this, the proposal we're looking at breaks it down into four main challenges. You can think of these as the four major fronts in this whole talent war. First up, branding. In a field that's just jam-packed with options, a university's reputation isn't just about getting students in the door, it's about attracting the best staff. How are you seen as an employer? That is absolutely everything. So this brings us to a really key term, the employer value proposition, or EVP. What is that? Well, it's basically the promise a university makes to the people who work there. It's the answer to the question, why should a brilliant mind come work for us instead of all those other places? Maybe one university's promise is amazing research funding, while another's is a fantastic collaborative culture. That's their EVP. Okay, next challenge, recruitment. The old way of doing things, you just post a job ad online and then kind of sit back and wait for people to apply. That whole playbook is basically broken now. It just doesn't work anymore if you're trying to find the real A players. And this slide just lays it out perfectly. It's this huge shift from the old post and pray method to a much more active, kind of surgical targeted search. This means you're not waiting for talent to come to you. You're going out and hunting for it. You're even going after those passive candidates, the superstars who aren't even looking for a job, but might just listen if the right offer comes along. And then, of course, there's the relentless pressure of university rankings. Love them or hate them, these lists have a massive real-world impact on whether or not an institution can pull in the best students and the best faculty. What's so wild about rankings is the feedback loop they create. It's like a cycle, right? A higher ranking gives you more prestige, which helps you get more research money, which helps you attract better students and faculty, and all of that, in turn, helps you get a better ranking. It's a cycle you desperately want to be on the right side of. And the fourth and final challenge is retention. After you've gone through all the hard work of finding and hiring these brilliant people, the fight is only half over. Now you've got to keep them from getting snatched up by your competitors who are always looking. Okay, so we've laid out four pretty big headaches. So what's the solution? Well, according to this business model, the answer to all of them is built on one thing: data. So to tackle that branding problem, the solution is a three-step process. First, you got to figure out what your brand promise, your EVP, actually is right now. Second, you use data to build really compelling stories about why your university is an amazing place to work. And third, you use those stories to build what they call a magnetic brand that just pulls in the best people. And the numbers here are, well, they're pretty staggering. By switching from that old post-and-pray way of doing things to a super targeted, data-driven approach, this strategy says universities could save up to 90% on some of their hiring costs. That's not just a small tweak, that's a total game changer. I love this slide because it just puts the whole strategy together in one place. It's so clear. You can see each of the four challenges we talked about lined up right next to a specific solution and a really clear outcome. From branding to retention, every problem has a data-focused fix. So who's the brain behind this whole model? A strategy this specific has to have a really strong philosophy driving it. So let's take a look at the expert who's leading the charge here. Turns out, this whole strategy is spearheaded by a guy named Jarrod Kanizay, and he is a total industry veteran. He spent his entire career deep in the world of university recruitment and branding. And his track record really speaks for itself. We're talking over 20 years of experience. He founded a huge academic job website called unijobs.com, and he was a managing director at Times Higher Education, which, is one of the biggest names out there when it comes to university rankings. And this quote right here, this really gets to the core of his whole philosophy. It's not about just writing up some big fancy report full of advice that's going to sit on a shelf and collect dust. No, The whole point is to build actual, practical tools that universities can use to make a real difference.
So, what's the secret sauce here? What makes this approach any different from, just hiring one of the big traditional consulting firms? Well, it really boils down to these three things. The biggest piece of the pie is that all the advice is driven by real-time data, not just theory. Then you combine that with a global reach that still has local know-how and a structure that's built to be way more agile and affordable. And this whole idea of an agile ecosystem is really the key. The goal here is to give universities the same kind of top-level strategy you'd get from an elite firm, but without all the huge overhead and crazy costs that usually come with that. It's all about being fast, smart, and efficient. Which leaves us with one last big question to chew on. As this global war for talent just keeps getting more and more intense, is winning no longer just about history and prestige? Is the future of academia going to be defined by who's best at using data and analytics to build and keep the best teams? Is that the new blueprint for winning?